The man who invented cornflakes did it to stop you from masturbating. He lost. I'm Jason Class, and I'm in a bathrobe because a lab coat would imply that I'm qualified. I'm not. I just read everything and check the footnotes. And I'll tell you which famous facts didn't survive the checking, especially the fun ones. Because here's the actual reason that I do this. I'm just a guy with a big in a bathrobe trying to help his wife understand that everyone, everywhere, has felt the exact same way that she does. She's not the first one to go looking. She won't be the last. And neither are you. This is Awkward Pillow Talk. Episode 1, Orgasms. Today we're doing orgasms. All of them. Everybody's. Going back 4,000 years. Because it turns out the thing that you're most private about is the single most studied, argued over, and thoroughly documented bodily function in human history. You're not the weird one. You're just the latest one. In 1999, a Dutch research team published a paper in the British Medical Journal with one of the great understated titles in scientific history: Magnetic Resonance Imaging of Male and Female Genitals During Coitus in Female Sexual Arousal. Here's what that means. They got a couple to have sex inside an MRI machine, a tube roughly the width of a coffin, while a machine that sounds like a construction site screamed at them. For science. They won the Ig Nobel Prize for it in 2000. That's the award for research that makes you laugh and then makes you think. And here's the part that I love. That paper has been, for over 20 years, one of the most viewed articles the BMJ has ever published. Out of everything. A journal that goes back to 1840. So let's be clear about the baseline here. Not the fringe, not the freaks. Doctors. The mainstream medical establishment. Given the entire library of human knowledge, they clicked on the sex one. That's not a scandal. That's a species-level personality trait. Let's start at the actual beginning. In ancient Egyptian creation mythology, the version out of Heliopolis, one of the oldest written cosmologies we have, the god Atum exists alone in the void. Nothing else. No earth, no sky, no other gods. So he masturbates. And that's how the universe starts. That's it. The first act of creation in one of the oldest religions on earth is a guy alone in the dark taking matters into his own hands. Life, the sky, the Nile, you, me, this conversation, all downstream of that. I want you to sit with the fact that this was the respectable, state-sponsored, carved into the pyramid version. This wasn't graffiti. This was scripture. Meanwhile, in ancient Greece, they had a whole manufacturing industry. Dildos, Olympos, with the city of Miletus known as the place to get the good ones. And we don't know this from some scandalous dig. We know it because a poet named Herodotus around the 3rd century BCE wrote a comedy sketch that is literally two women having a conversation about a really good dildo and where to get one. 2,300 years ago, somebody wrote the sex toy review, and then somebody else thought it was good enough to copy down and preserve. That's a supply chain of horniness stretching across 2 millennia to reach you right now. And in India, around the same broad era, the Kama Sutra, which everybody thinks is a book of pretzel positions and is mostly not, spends real serious page count on the question of women's pleasure. Vatsyayana is out here arguing that if a woman isn't satisfied, the man has failed. In the 3rd century. Here's the medical consensus for most of Western history inherited from Hippocrates and Galen. Conception requires 2 seeds, his and hers, and her seed only releases when she orgasms. Which sounds, honestly, kind of great. It means for centuries, European medical texts are telling husbands that getting your wife off isn't optional. It's reproductive necessity. There are marriage manuals. There is technique advice. Doctors are writing prescriptions for foreplay. And then you follow that logic one more step, and it gets very dark, very fast. Because if pregnancy proves orgasm, and orgasm proves pleasure, and pleasure proves consent, then a woman who got pregnant from a rape could not have been raped. And that wasn't a thought experiment. That was case law. That was used in courtrooms. One wrong idea about a bodily function, and it wrecked lives for centuries. And you might be thinking, Thank God we cleared that up ages ago. In 2012, a sitting U.S. congressman running for Senate said essentially the same thing on television, that the female body has ways of shutting that down. Galen, 2nd century, still in the water supply. Now, the clitoris. In 1559, an Italian anatomist named Rialdo Colombo published a book announcing he had discovered it. He named it, he claimed it, and a rival, anatomist Gabriele Falloppio, yes, that Falloppio, the tubes guy, immediately said no. I found it first. Two men fighting over who gets credit for discovering the clitoris, which women had been aware of the entire time because it's on the outside. That is the most 16th century guy thing that has ever happened. Imagine two dudes in a screaming match over who first noticed the doorbell. Okay, now I have to take something away from you. You've heard the story Victorian doctors treating hysteria would manually stimulate women to orgasm in the office. It was exhausting. Their hands cramped, so they invented the vibrator as a labor-saving device. And they didn't think it was sexual because there was no penetration. Great story. Everybody knows it. It became a book, a Broadway play, and a movie with Maggie Gyllenhaal. It's not true. That story traces to almost entirely one source, a 1999 book called The Technology of Orgasm by Rachel Maines. In 2018, two historians at Georgia Tech, Hallie Lieberman and Eric Schatzberg, did something nobody had bothered to do in 19 years. They went and checked her footnotes. The sources don't say what the book says they say. They could not find evidence that physicians used electromechanical vibrators to bring patients to orgasm as a medical treatment at all. The title of their paper is A Failure of Academic Quality Control, which in academic speak is roughly the equivalent of flipping over a table. And here's the part that actually blows my mind. This book won a major history prize. It got cited in dozens of scholarly works. For 19 years, nobody checked. Why? Because it was such a good story. It flattered everyone. It made Victorians look like idiots, it made us look enlightened, and it was hilarious at parties. Which is my favorite thing about the entire history of the orgasm. We will believe absolutely anything about it, as long as the story is fun and it makes someone else the fool. Now, the Victorians were still deeply weird about sex, just in a different direction. John Harvey Kellogg, the cereal guy, the sanitarium guy, was a genuine anti-masturbation crusader who wrote about doing things to children's genitals that I am not going to describe on a podcast. Bland food, he thought, would calm the passions. So there's your fun fact, correctly aimed. The man who gave America breakfast cereal was trying to stop you from masturbating. He lost, spectacularly. But he did get cornflakes out of it. Freud. Freud decides there are two kinds of female orgasm, clitoral and vaginal. And the clitoral one is immature. Something you're supposed to grow out of. He had no data. He was just a guy with a theory and a beard. And for roughly 50 years, that theory made millions of women believe there was something psychologically wrong with them for having a completely normal body work in a completely normal way. Therapists treated it. Marriages broke over it. Then the counting starts. Alfred Kinsey, 1948 and 1953, does the thing nobody had done. He asks thousands of people, what do you actually do? And America opens the book and finds out that everything it thought was rare and shameful is, in fact, Tuesday. Then Masters and Johnson, in the 1960s, do the thing nobody had done next. They watch in a lab with instruments, thousands of orgasms observed and measured, and out of it comes the 4-stage model of sexual response: excitement, plateau, orgasm, resolution, which is still the framework we argue about today. Then, in 1970, an activist named Ann Coate writes an essay called The Myth of the Vaginal Orgasm and just detonates Freud. And in 1976, the Height Report lands Sheer Height, surveys thousands of women, and finds the large majority don't reliably orgasm from intercourse alone. Read that again. That was news. In 1976, it was a scandal. People were furious, not because it was surprising to women, because it was surprising to everyone else. And here's my favorite piece of the whole timeline. The first genuinely comprehensive anatomical study of the clitoris, the full structure, the internal parts, the whole organ, not just the visible bit, was published by an Australian urologist named Helen O'Connell in 1998. 1998. We had mapped the human genome before we finished mapping that. We had put people on the moon. Textbooks were mislabeling it or leaving it out entirely for decades. One woman essentially had to do it herself. Once the full anatomy was finally on the table, researchers stopped pretending anything was off limits. The results get delightfully strange. All right, the modern research is where it gets fun because scientists have decided nothing is off limits. The orgasm. In 2012, Debbie Herbenek at Indiana University published the first real study of exercise-induced orgasm. Turns out a meaningful number of people can orgasm from working out. No fantasy, no touching, just effort. The number one trigger? Ab exercises. Distant second? Climbing ropes. And in a national survey, roughly 1 in 10 adults report having experienced it. Men too. Every gym in America, right now, somebody's having a really confusing set. The nose thing. In 2021, the Ig Nobel Prize in Medicine went to a team in Germany for a study called, and this is real, Can Sex Improve Nasal Function? They recruited 18 couples, measured airflow before and after, and found that orgasm clears a stuffy nose about as well as decongestant spray for up to an hour. I want to flag that they specified data was only collected if both partners got there. Rigorous methodology. Respect. The one that reframes everything, Barry Komisaruk and Beverly Whipple at Rutgers studied women with complete spinal cord injuries, women whose genital signals physically cannot reach the brain through the spine, and they orgasmed anyways. The signal was traveling the vagus nerve, a completely separate highway that bypasses the spinal cord entirely. Same team, brain scans, orgasm from thought alone. No touch, lights up the same regions. Which tells you what this actually is. Orgasm is not a genital event. It's a brain event. The genitals are one input. There are others. That's why people report it from nipples, from dreams, from exercise, from nothing at all. And the pigs. In Denmark, standard artificial insemination technique for sows included a whole stimulation protocol. A specific 5-point sequence the technician performs. Early studies suggested it improved birth rates by a few percent. Later trials were murkier, so let's be honest, the science is contested. But the fact remains that there is a country where how to properly turn on a pig is a documented, trained, professional agricultural skill. Somebody's grandfather taught somebody's father. There is institutional knowledge. Okay. Last thing, the number. There's a study from 2018, Frederick and colleagues, over 52,000 American adults. They asked how often people usually orgasm with a partner. Straight men, 95%. Gay men, 89%. Bisexual men, 88%. Lesbian women, 86%. Bisexual women, 66%. Straight women, 65%. Look at that list again. Look where lesbian women are. 86. If the gap were anatomy, if women's bodies were just harder to operate, that number would be down at the bottom with the other women. It's not. It's up top with the men. So it's not the equipment, it's the script. It's what we've all agreed sex is supposed to look like, how long it's supposed to last, whose finish line counts as the end. The gap isn't biological, it's cultural, which is the best news in the entire episode because you can't rewrite anatomy, but you can absolutely rewrite a script. Here's where I've landed after going down this hole. 4,000 years, Egyptian gods, Greek dildo reviews, anatomists fighting over a doorbell, a cereal magnet declaring war on your hands, Freud making millions of women feel broken for having a normal body, a fake vibrator story that fooled academia for 19 years because it was fun, 2 people in an MRI tube, and a Danish guy who is, professionally, extremely good at this with pigs. All of it, every century of it, is humanity doing the same 2 things at once, being completely obsessed with this and being completely unable to talk about it like adults. You are not the weird one. You're just the latest one. Everybody's body does this. Everybody's body has always done this. Every single person who has ever lived, every pharaoh, every anatomist, every Victorian doctor writing pamphlets about the dangers of self-abuse was walking around with the exact same equipment and the exact same set of complicated feelings about it. The only thing that's ever actually changed is how honest we were willing to be out loud. So, be the honest one. It's a 4,000-year backlog, and somebody's got to start. All right, that's the episode. If you want more of this, It's all at awkwardxxx.com. That's where the book lives, too. The Awkward Couple's Guide to Getting Weird. And it's the same idea pointed at your actual relationship instead of history. How to start the conversation, what to do when it goes sideways, and how to stop performing at each other. I'm Jason Klass. Thanks for hanging out with a man in a bathrobe.